rebels just a few days to establish control over the largest city in the country, Aleppo, and a large part of the province of the same name. The unexpected offensive of Syrian rebel groups on the positions of pro-government forces caught everyone off guard, and Aleppo, where celebrations are currently ongoing due to the release of reports by supporters of the Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad, has been celebrating for several hours. So what really happened? Why, in the Syrian conflict, which is not yet over, but has started to be somewhat forgotten against the backdrop of Russia's war against Ukraine and the major crisis in the Middle East, did such a significant shift occur? And this can be explained quite simply. The regime of Bashar al-Assad primarily relies on the bayonets of its Russian and Iranian patrons. Russia primarily helps Assad with aviation. As is known, Aleppo was captured after devastating bombings of the city by Russian pilots just before they began doing the same on Ukrainian soil. Russian mercenaries from the so-called Wagner Group also fight for Assad, along with representatives of Russian special services and groups formed in place of Wagner after the elimination of Yevgeny Prigozhin. Iran also helps the Syrian regime with troops, but not so much its own as those of proxy formations, primarily the terrorist organization Hezbollah, which, as is known, has tried to establish control over this Lebanese state. Russia's war against Ukraine has significantly reduced the capabilities of Russian aviation in Syrian airspace. The Israeli strike on Hezbollah, of course, forced the leadership of this organization to transfer a significant portion of its resources to Lebanon. The attempt to hold at least those positions that Hezbollah had after Israel launched a decisive offensive, which practically eliminated the entire leadership of that criminal group and neutralized a significant portion of the militants meticulously prepared by Iran. And in general, if Iran was still interested in Syria and Bashar al-Assad, then Hezbollah is clearly not in the interests of the Syrian dictator, as it could lose any influence in its own state. Moreover, Israel shows no desire to destroy even those Hezbollah leaders who still remain at the head of the organization, and those militants of Hezbollah who still hope to fight against the Jewish state. So no one said that a truce with Israel would be a celebration for Hezbollah and its units. And it was this weakening of the positions of Assad's three main patrons, Russia, Iran, and Hezbollah, that the Syrian opposition forces, as well as Turkey, led by Recep Tayyip Erdogan, took advantage of. The Turkish president has his own desires. Firstly, he hates Assad and takes advantage of any opportunity to destabilize the regime of this dictator. On the other hand, Erdogan is trying to reduce the influence of Kurdish political forces in Syria, as he fears momentum for Kurdish parties that are grouped within Turkey itself. As is known, the Kurdish issue is one of the biggest problems for this state, which may still pose challenges to the stability and territorial integrity of Turkey in the future. And Erdogan is trying to weaken this problem in the way he knows how, and he knows how to do this, primarily by supporting those pro-Turkish forces that are also involved in the activities of the Syrian opposition. Overall, it should be said that the groups that are celebrating victory over Assad's regime today are Islamists. The groups that have united in a common front are quite diverse in terms of their political views on the future of Syria, ranging from extreme radicals to moderate Islamist groups. But, regardless, the capture of Aleppo is one of the biggest defeats not only for Bashar al-Assad, but also for Vladimir Putin in recent years. According to certain information, Assad arrived in the Russian capital to consult with his main patron on what to do in such a situation. And will the development of the Syrian rebel group's offensive be so serious that it will ultimately put an end to the existence of one of the most inhumane regimes in the Middle East, thus creating serious problems for both Vladimir Putin and Ayatollah Khamenei, who hope to continue destabilizing the region with Assad's help. It is only unknown what Vladimir Putin can now respond to his Syrian ally. After all, when the war in Syria began, Putin viewed it as one of the important elements of destabilizing the West, at least through the same migration crisis. And he hoped that this war would weaken Western countries and prevent them from responding to the already practically planned blitzkrieg to change the Ukrainian government and turn our state into a puppet entity under Moscow's aegis. It did not happen as expected. Vladimir Putin is effectively bogged down in a years-long war of Russia against Ukraine, from which there is no real political exit. And as we can see, there is no desire to exit this conflict in the coming years. We can only hope that US President Donald Trump, when he returns to the Oval Office, be able to find such levers of influence on the Russian leader that will make him consider a ceasefire. However, hopes for this are, of course, quite conditional, because no one knows what these levers are. And first and foremost, at the top of the list of those who do not know, is Donald Trump himself. In this situation, engaging in the Middle East, deploying troops there amid a shortage of Russian military on the front lines in Ukraine, using aircraft at a time when Putin has planned years of shelling Ukraine with Russian aviation, all of this certainly does not fit into the immediate plans of the Russian butcher. And therefore, the capture of Aleppo is an unpleasant surprise for Vladimir Putin, reminding him once again that it is impossible to create problems literally all over the world and expect to manage them. Strong positions. The focus is that Putin has so many ambitions that he may not be able to handle them and could simply find himself in a situation where his entire sphere of influence and all his destabilizing actions will diminish before his eyes, leading to the destabilization of Russia itself, which we sincerely wish for. Thank you, friends. Stay on this channel, subscribe to it, follow me on my social media, on Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, and Donatella, which help develop these resources. Use the sponsorship feature on YouTube itself. Wishing you victory and peace. Good luck.